state will regulate a militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I am glad that you have joined us today. The us on today's program, Dave Adams of the Virginia Shooting Sports Association, is going to be joining the program momentarily, talking about the latest doings at the state legislature. We have a deadline that is quickly approaching, a little bit more than a week away from the crossover deadline. That's where bills basically have to cross out of their house of origin in order to continue to have legislative life. And there is a big bill in Virginia that has not even had a committee hearing yet, much less a vote in the full House. We'll talk with Dave about that, but also talking with Dave about a Senate committee meeting Monday morning in Virginia to consider a host of gun control bills. And the good news is some of them actually died in committee. I know. Can you believe that? So, yeah, we've needed some good news in Virginia, and we got a little bit of good news from Dave Adams of the Virginia Shooting Sports Association. Take a look and listen. Dave, thank you so much, sir, for coming back on the program. It's great talking with you today.
Thanks for having me back, Cam.
You bet. So we are continuing to watch as these bills, some of them anyway, make their way through the Virginia State Legislature. We had another committee hearing Monday morning over on the Senate side, correct?
Correct. Senate Judiciary.
And there were some gun control bills that were up for discussion. What happened?
Well, we had several bills that had been heard already on the January 22nd at that marathon Wednesday afternoon meeting that went for about 3.5 hours. They heard those bills then, but didn't take any action on this morning. Senator Edwards started off the meeting by passing by for the year, meaning they're still alive, but they're on life support. They won't come back up during this session. They can come back up next year. Senate Bill 13, which was Senator Eben's bill that would prohibit transporting or possessing a weapon within the Capitol Square. That was passed by, so that's dead for this session. Senate Bill 15 is also another one from Senator Eben, and that would have prohibited carrying a firearm into a building owned or leased by the Commonwealth. So that would have not just been the state buildings that have only state agencies, but if they lease a building, and that was one of the questions that senators had on the 22nd, was how does this affect someone walking into a building doing business in another office that's not the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth is leasing the bill. So that's been passed by as well. We don't have to worry about this one, this session.
Okay, that's good news. That some of these bad bills are falling by the wayside. Of course, Dave, let me ask you about House Bill 961. And I know you and I have talked about this before. This is the gun ban, magazine ban, suppressor ban, trigger activator ban that Governor Northam wants. And I believe that the Speaker of the House, Eileen Filler-Corn, has said that they're having discussions about this bill, trying to get it out of. But frankly, it hadn't even had a committee vote, and we've got a deadline next week where all of these bills, if they originate in the House, they've got to cross over to the Senate. All of these bills that originate in the Senate have to cross over to the House, or else they're done for the year. Does it look like House Bill 961 is in some serious trouble right now?
If they're going to hear it, they're going to have to do it in full committee on Friday, because the firearms subcommittee docket came out this morning, and it's not on there, so they're not going to hear it in subcommittee. We, of course, don't have the agenda yet for Friday. I do know the NRA has put out an alert and urged members to be prepared to show up at the committee meeting on Friday. And we've been telling their members all along, you need to be constantly contacting your legislators, not only on the House side, but on the Senate side, because there are 4 senators we've been targeting the entire session who have expressed concerns about both the Senate bill that was pulled by Senator Sasslaw, but as well as the bill that's in the House. So, Senator Peterson, and he actually, he helped us out on a couple of bills in committee this morning. We did away with Senator Howell's bill related to allowing possession of a firearm or access to a firearm by a minor under the age of 18. That died on a vote of 7-8 this morning. And Senator Peterson was one of the ones who asked questions about that bill. in the beginning on the 22nd. That was another one that was heard a couple of weeks ago, but no action was taken. And he was one of the ones that helped kill that bill in committee this morning.
That's very good news because that is now. But here's the thing: so that bill was killed in committee, but we did see a House bill that contains similar language, anyway, right? Pass out of the House, go over to the Senate, which I guess brings me to my next question. The Senate has watered down some of these proposals. I won't say that they've made them acceptable to gun owners, but they've watered them down a little bit. They've moderated them. We have not seen that over on the House side. And so I guess maybe the big question now is, what does the reconciliation process look like, Dave, between the House versions and the Senate versions?
Yeah, historically, you will see bills get conformed. If there's a bill that's passed the Senate, they will conform the House bill that comes over to the Senate bill. The interesting thing about the bill that's having to do with minors, the one that passed the House would make that a felony. Senator Howell had reduced her penalty to a Class 1 misdemeanor, and it still didn't pass. So I can imagine the fate that the House bill is going to find in the state Senate when it gets over there. And so the good thing is that will prolong the process, because if each House insists on their version, then you go to conference committee, and then it's kind of Katie bar the door. Anything can come out of that. Or that's also a way to kill it, too, if they can't come to agreement. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, again, we've seen a lot of these bills pass out of their House of origin. They've crossed over already, but that doesn't mean that any bill that's passed, let's say a Senate bill that's passed out of the Senate, that doesn't mean that the final version of that legislation is going to look anything like what we've seen approved by lawmakers so far.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Again, another key reason why gun owners in Virginia need to be in constant contact with their lawmakers. Is that having an impact, Dave, from what you're hearing at the Capitol?
Absolutely. And I can tell you another bill that died this morning, it's still alive because it was passed on for the day, was Senator Bell's outdoor range bill. That had been changed multiple times from the time he presented it on the 22nd. We had a lot of our member ranges. We've got 26 affiliated ranges around the Commonwealth, and we have been telling them to contact their legislators, let them know that that's a bad bill, because as it was originally put in, it would have affected every outdoor range in the Commonwealth. Senator Bell amended it and had it only basically address one issue, an issue in Loudoun County where someone was not shooting safely and a bullet ended up on somebody else's property and grazed a woman, and that's why he put that bill in. It was targeting more private ranges on private property, not ranges like Arlington, Fairfax, or some other ranges around the Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. But even at that, we were telling folks you needed to contact the legislators, because that's a rare situation that happened in Loudoun County. Most people shoot safely on their own private property. Yep. And he would have stopped that, because they would have had to comply with some kind of regulation or requirement in constructing a range on your private property. And so having gun owners contacting their legislators has had an impact, especially in the Senate. Sadly, not as much in the House, but in the Senate, there are some folks there, and they will listen. And that's why folks need to stay in contact completely all the way through the session.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Senator Linwood Lewis, who I know you and I have talked about a couple of times during this session, he had an op-ed in his local paper, I think it was Shore News Daily, where he talked about, and he's a Democrat, he's one of those 4 senators, as you note, who's opposed to House Bill 961, and sort of his line in the sand was, he said, well, I want to focus on, I think he called them access issues, in his words, ensuring that people who aren't allowed to have a gun can't get access to a firearm. But he said he has no interest in banning things, be it firearms or magazines. And, listen, I do disagree with Senator Lewis in terms of the effectiveness and constitutionality of some of these quote unquote access bills. But it is interesting to see that even on the Democrat side, you do have some politicians here who say, listen, this is going to be a bridge too far. The question is whether or not those voices are going to carry the day.
That's exactly right. From the beginning of the session, we've kind of focused on the state Senate, because that's seems to be where, and I hate to use a term, but for lack of a better word, that's where the more moderating forces are. And you have some folks who have in the past in the state Senate supported the right to keep and bear arms, and they've been pretty good friends of Virginia's gun owners. And even folks like Chap Peterson, who is up in Fairfax, that you wouldn't normally consider that to fall in that category. Mm-hmm. He's a gun owner. Yeah, and one of the things he talked about this morning, having to do with the minor access bill, was taking his daughter to shoot over at the Isaac Walton Club in Centerville. And he says, you don't learn how to not be reckless until you're trained. And, the first time you're trained, you're not experienced. And so how am I going to keep from being, falling prey to this bill if I've never been trained before and somebody hands me a firearm? So there are folks in the Senate, and legislators that will listen and are helping us out on these bills. And that's what we're looking forward to. I think that the Senate had in mind to get out the priorities that the governor had, with the exception of maybe the so-called assault weapons bill. Mm-hmm. They focused immediately on the background check and one handgun a month. Even that bill is better than the House bill, because at least they put it back to where it was post 2004. They don't even have the exemption for concealed carry holders in the House bill. So this is still early in the process. Even though they've passed out of their House of Origin, there are so many bills, they're not going to start taking up the other house's bills until crossover.
Okay. All right. And you're right. I mean, it's a 60-day session, so it's actually fairly fast moving. Which, I know there's a lot of dozens of bills, frankly, to try to keep track of at this point in time. And I appreciate the efforts of the Virginia Shooting Sports Association for doing this. I think you've been at every committee hearing to date, have you not?
There has been a presence. If it's not myself, it's our lobbyist that's been there.
Well, again, I appreciate all of the efforts that you're doing on the part of Virginia gun owners. As you say, we're not out of the woods yet. We are going to see some bad bills become bad laws. Unfortunately, it's just how bad are they going to be? And that's very much an open question. I mean, you look at things like the attack on firearms preemption. Again, you talk about clear differences between the Senate version and the House version. Senate version is bad enough. I mean, it would allow localities to sue gun manufacturers. It would allow localities to ban gun shows on a property that's owned by the local government, as well as banning firearms from permanent events. But the House version, Dave, just completely guts the state's firearms preemption language and would allow for localities all across the Commonwealth to just set their own gun laws, as long as they were more restrictive than the current state law, right? You couldn't go in the other direction. This doesn't codify Second Amendment sanctuaries. This just says if you want to have more restrictive laws, go right ahead.
That's exactly right. And, the patrons of that bill keep telling us, look, this is permissive. We're not telling localities they have to do something. They're missing the point. You've got localities that are just waiting and just have bated breath to do this type of thing. And then you're going to have a situation where someone lives in one locality and wants to go and shoot at a range, 3 or 4 localities away, and they've got to worry about not just one set of laws, but 4 different sets of laws that could be possible.
Yeah, you're right. And again, they're fine with that. I mean, this is one of the other things that we've seen come out of this legislative session is that there's no real desire on the part of the Democrats in charge of the state legislature to deal with violent criminals, to ensure that they serve serious time for serious crimes. Their efforts are squarely focused on the legal law-abiding gun owners and confining that right to keep and bear arms and frankly, turning it into a privilege.
Exactly right. Nothing that they have proposed or passed to this point would have any impact on crime. And their target is clearly law-abiding gun owners.
Well, Dave, again, thank you for being there, and we will continue to keep folks updated thanks to all of your efforts. If you are advising Virginia gun owners to pay attention to, one thing or one bill going forward this week, what should we be looking at?
961. We'll find out Friday or probably Thursday when the agenda comes up whether that bill is going to make it out into committee or not. That's the bill that I hear the most about, or the topic. If they don't give me the bill number, it's the topic, the assault weapons, and everything else covered in that bill. a related bill that was over in the Senate this morning, Senate Bill 14, with Senator Saslaw's trigger activator bump stock bill.
Mm-hmm.
He actually amended that bill to just mirror what the federal regulation is right now. So it basically doesn't do anything more than what federal law already is under the regulation that the Trump administration passed. So once again, things change because gun owners are contacting their legislators.
Yeah. What about, is there a separate magazine ban? I know that House Bill 961 does have a ban on magazines, but over 10 rounds. But is there other legislation that deals solely with a magazine ban?
No, that was all encompassed in Senate Bill 16 over on the Senate side.
Okay.
So there's nothing, the Senate's not going to do anything with that unless 961 comes over.
Okay. All right. Well, that's, I guess, one small bit of good news, a little bit of a silver lining there for Virginia gun owners. Dave, as always, sir, thanks so much for your time today, and I look forward to catching up again soon. All right. So again, Virginia gun owners, we're still deep in the woods. We're not out of the woods yet, not even close. But I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about House Bill 961. I probably for the first time. Well, listen, I'll tell you what. I've felt cautiously optimistic about it since AB 16 or Senate Bill 16 was actually killed by Senator Saslaw. But I am also well aware of the fact that Democrats in control of the legislature want to get every one of Ralph Northam's gun control proposals to his desk. And that would include a quote-unquote assault weapons ban. If they can't do that, that's going to be seen as a loss. Look, they control the House. They control the Senate. They control the governor's mansion. If they can't get the governor's centerpiece proposal passed when they control the legislature, then that busts a whole lot of narratives about how these are just common sense gun safety proposals that are supported by the vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of Virginians. So I still think they're going to try as hard as they can to get something out of the House. I don't think they're just going to roll over and give up on this bill, but they only have about a week to do it. So again, keep up the constant contact with your state representative or your state delegate in Virginia, your state senator, and urge them to oppose Governor Ralph Northam's gun control agenda. All right, let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there from Cleveland, Ohio, where a gentleman is now suspecting at least 7 violent robberies in the Cleveland area. And as it turns out, this guy no stranger to law enforcement. David Johnson's his name. He's 32 years of age. And apparently his MO, he would go into, gas stations, convenience stores, Dollar General, I think in one place or in one circumstance, and he would grab a customer and he would put a gun to their head. And then he would go to the clerk and say, "Give me your money. Give me your cash." 7 of these alleged robberies. They actually found some of the items that Johnson was using, allegedly, including a pair of gloves and a hat and his gun. According to Cleveland 19 News there, Johnson previously convicted on charges that include involuntary manslaughter, aggravated robbery, and drug trafficking. He was apparently robbing somebody and he shot them. Yeah, how about that? Back in 2005, sentenced to 10 years in prison. Just 10 years. Just 10 years for killing somebody in the commission of a violent robbery. He was released on parole approximately a year ago. So if he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, he actually ended up doing 14. That generally doesn't happen. I'm guessing Mr. Johnson must have had quite a few disciplinary actions while he was behind bars. Now, had he been sentenced to, 20 or 30 years behind bars when he actually took a human life, maybe even longer, he would not have been out on the streets. He would not be accused of these 7 violent robberies, but he was, and he is. All right, on to our armed citizen story of the day. Also, by the way, from Cleveland, Ohio. This from 19 News again. I didn't realize it was the same source. How about that? Armed dad stops carjackers, follows them through old Brooklyn neighborhood. Apparently there's been a string of violent crimes in the Brooklyn Park neighborhood or Old Brooklyn neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio. And this gentleman, this concealed carry holder, was driving home with his wife on Tuesday night when he noticed a couple of guys trying to break into cars. He said, I had 2 pizzas on my lap. I kind of threw them up on the dash. As they approached, the strangers approached him and his wife, pulled a gun on the suspects. 2 guys ran off, and that's when the concealed carry holder hopped in his truck and followed them from his home. He said they were kind of jumping through the yard, so I was catching a glimpse of them here and there, and they disappear for a second. Caught up with the would-be thieves at an auto repair shop, and they jumped into a waiting Chevy Traverse. The armed citizen says, I think we're more angry than anything. It's almost like violating. As 19 News reports in Cleveland, there have been a number of carjackings and break-ins. Woman carjacked on the same block, actually, is where this dad lives in just about a week ago. And about 2 weeks ago, they reported that dozens of cars were vandalized. Armed citizen says, quote, I think if we want to keep it a good neighborhood, we're going to have to fight. Well, there you go. And thankfully, again, he was hopefully able to get a description of the car, the Chevy Traverse that they took off, and maybe even license plates, although wouldn't be surprised if that was stolen either. Glad that dad and mom and kids are okay. Concealed carry holder who did not have to pull the trigger in order to protect himself and his family, and hopefully those suspects get caught here in the very near future as well. All right. Finally, our good deed of the day from Melbourne, Florida, where a school resource officer on his way to work at Melbourne High School when he saw the smoke from a apartment fire and diverted himself. Police officer Robert Smith saw the flames, ended up helping a woman escape that burning building before continuing on his way to work. How about that? So definitely in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Officer Smith, we thank you, sir, for your very good deed. Now, we are continuing to follow several other stories at BearingArms.com today, including a new proposed tax increase on firearms and ammunition in the state of Illinois. Plus, if you read our coverage over the weekend, or maybe you didn't, go take a look at what's going on in Hawaii, where dozens of anti-gun bills have been filed. You've got an anti-gun legislature in place already, and this could be some of the bills that have been filed in Hawaii. Honestly, they make Virginia's gun control bills look like Texas bills. I mean, they're that extreme. They are that invasive in terms of targeting the right to keep and bear arms. And if they pass these bills in Hawaii, guess what? They will be coming to a state near you very, very soon. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company. Thank you for being a part of the program today. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com's podcast page as well. Also, Town Hall Media at YouTube. You can find us there, and you can subscribe. That way you never miss a program. You can also become a VIP member of BearingArms.com. That means you get exclusive commentary, analysis, and more. And you make sure that we are able to continue to produce the Second Amendment journalism that this nation so desperately needs. Thanks so much for being a part of the program today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll see you back here tomorrow with another brand new edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company.